So for me, I want to kind of change that dichotomy into this, instead of a pass fail ideology, like, hey, it's a learning curve and
Exactly.
let's
Yeah.
take you down the curve.
My wife and I actually talk about that a lot. Instead of setting people up for failure and in our places of business, like she's in management herself, and so one thing that they seriously lacked was standardized training for all of them. And so I was like, well, hey, by not having this, you're kind of doing them a disservice by they don't know they screw up and they don't know what they're doing to screw up, or like when one person notices that they're doing this, instead of coaching that out of them, they're like automatically in trouble.
And see, it goes back to what we were talking about earlier about like,
Like, you're
it's a,
never going to keep people that way.
you can sort of, if you, there's a different way to do it. And this is kind of why I want to get into business for myself. Right. I don't like the current way corporate America does things in terms of their employees. And so far right now, neither do employees.
Right.
They don't want to work. It's a generation. I don't want to say they don't want to work, but they're bouncing job to job because of the frustrations they're finding in corporate America. You're not allowed to make a mistake.
Right.
You're not allowed to explain yourself. You're not allowed to, there's so many things that unfortunately folks are going through in the job market that aren't fair. So when you don't have the whole, I can get into like a big long diatribe in this, but the reason that we have
No, by all means,
these
by all means.
training manuals and these standardized training manuals has less to do with you as an employee and more to do with protecting that company from liability.
Yes,
HR departments
yes.
are not your friends.
No.
They are the I like to call them the paralegals for the company. They're not
Yeah.
lawyers. Well, sometimes they are actually, but typically they're not lawyers, but there's a handful, they're starting to become lawyers. There's
Right.
a lot of them out there that are lawyers, and they become like the paralegal group that's there just to protect the company. And they're going to be your friend.
Right.
They're going to put their arm around you, just like the defense attorney who's trying to depose you in a lawsuit.
Right.
They're going to try to be your friend to elicit as much information as they can, right? So that's what's going on, and that's what that whole training manual is about, protecting their ass, not yours.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And I actually, a few years when I stopped working, actually, I applied for unemployment. And the only reason I got it was because of the lack of training manual.
Sure. And don't get me wrong. I think that as a company owner or a franchise owner, I need to have that. And I do have that.
Right.
I have the manuals and I have the standardized training, but I also believe in, I'll take something from the education. I'm not a big fan of American education, how it works, but
Me neither.
the one thing that I think is really cool and I think should be more universal, but it's got a bad name because of how we've used it in this country, is what's known as an IEP, right? An individualized education plan.
My three boys all three have IEPs.
And it gets a stigma because it's being used only for people that have some sort of issue, right?
No, man, it's used to get them through this bullshit that they put them through.
Exactly.
Like they're not learning anything in that building, man. I'm like, the public education here sucks.
It does.
I'm like, man, my wife and I are watching a documentary on the Cold War. And of course, I know a lot about it. She knows very little. And it's because it was never taught.
Yeah.
It was, we had a Cold War. And this is like, because they all lived through the damn thing. Like,
Right.
as they're teaching us about the Cold War, it's like, well, what was the cause? What was the effect? What was going on? And there's
just a
so
giant
many
dick
things
measuring contest. Is all it was.
exactly is what it was. But how many times did we come close to annihilation during that? And nobody ever wants to tell us about that. We've got nuclear warheads pointed at our foreheads right now.
Yeah.
Nobody ever wants to talk about how if one guy just loses
It's
their
because
shit.
we need to count for everybody's feelings still. So, but the truth of the matter is both can be true, right? Like we can account for people's feelings and we can talk
Absolutely.
about our history and what it is and the reality of it is. But for me, going back to what I was saying, I believe in the workplace, there should be an individualized training program.
Absolutely.
I can't, my son is a perfect example. We have a different relationship no matter how professional it is and how much we do that. He talks to me more because we talk outside. We go to Easter dinner. He was up for my birthday. Like those are the things that he just has an advantage of. So it's you can't not cross that line, right?
Right.
And then I have employees that are like super smart, fast, they get it. You have other people that are people pleasers and they try to please you and everything. So you got to kind of change your dynamic a bit with them.
Yeah.
You know, I've got one, he's like super quiet and I can never tell if he's upset, angry, happy. I don't know what's going on, you know? And so when you have that diversity, when I worked at the last place I worked at, that's how I treated my managers. You know, they were individuals and I would catch a lot of heat from it sometimes where if I'm looking at it, one person and I'm saying, hey, do this, it's because they've got the rest down.
Yeah.
You know, I have weaknesses as a manager. You
Absolutely.
know? I talk too much, right? Right. So, you know, if I'm talking too much and I've got somebody who's just egging to say something, you know, then, and I'm talking over them the entire time, I've got to change my dynamic with them. Otherwise I'm going to lose them. And that's the problem with corporate America. It's like cookie cutter houses and sheep in
short attention spans.
Right.
Yeah.
You're just shoving them through the door as fast as you can. What was it? Amazon was going to run out of workforce people they could hire by like 2026 or something like that.
Yeah.
Because they shuffle so many people in and out of their warehouses. And it's because it's a numbers game for them. And, you know, I don't want my house to look like the guys next door. You know, I got a house right now that looks like a couple of other houses, so I'm going to change it.
Yeah, all the houses in my neighborhood look the same, including mine. But like the interior of mine is completely different from this house is only like 20 years old. The house that originally was here burnt down, and so all these houses look the same. But
I mean, if you look, and what makes them unique and different is what's in the inside, or what's even on your what's on your curb appeal, or what's, you know, in your front yard or in your backyard. That's what makes it different. And it's going to be different. Your grass may not be the same as your neighbors across the street,
right?
You know,
yeah.
And so how you treat it is going to be different.
Absolutely.
You know, you may have got a shoddy bunch of lumber that built yours versus the neighbor who got like great 100-year-old lumber.
Right.
You know,
but without that standardized, like you were saying, that was to protect their themselves from liability. But without that standardized a program or standardized procedures and training, without that stuff, like everybody, like, yes, we can treat them like individuals, but there are expectations and performances of the job.
So, and I agree with that, because that should be your jump point, not your standard.
Absolutely.
Or not. That's why I hate the word standard, because it becomes like, oh, well, you violated this.
Yeah,
Here's your write-up.
Right.
You know,
yeah.
Come on. Like there's so much gray in life.
Yes,
it's not even funny. And I can't tell you how many times I've sat with either an HR person or
and maybe
superior.
that's the difficulty in trying to find different, like for a department inside of a large company, why it may fail because of that standardized, when the people that they're bringing in to hire are extremely individualized. And
well, they try to have it both ways. Two things can't, like I keep saying it over and over, two things can be true, but there's a couple areas in the world where they can't be. Like, you can't sit there and say you care about somebody and then treat them like cattle that you're branding as they come through, right? You can't, don't get me wrong, you can still care for the cattle after you branded it, but at the end of the day, you expect the cattle to do what you want, eat, feed, and then get slaughtered, right? So in the business world, you know, if you're going to treat everything transactionally, expect to get transactional reactions. Don't expect them to go, well, this is family. No, it's not. I'm sorry.
Right.
And that's why we have the problem we have now. It's going to catch up eventually.
Yeah.
You know, I grew up in the workforce going through that, and I can't tell you how many companies that I felt like were my family.
Yeah, I got my feelings hurt.
You know,
by at the end of one of those relationships that they said, hey, we're all family here. And at the end of that relationship, I found out we weren't.
Right.
You know, and I took it as like, this is business and this is what happens. But it was like, they cut me off, man.
Well,
and
it's the whole loyalty thing, you know, the generation before mine.
I was loyal.
Those boomers, or whatever you want to call them, you know, the baby boomers, they, you know, that's my dad's generation. And those guys, you know, loyalty is a big deal. When I first left a job, after I left law enforcement and I got my first job and I left it, I got ridiculed.
Yeah.
I was only there a year, and they were like, what are you doing? You know, you got to build loyalty. And I still, to
man,
this
you
day,
don't pay me enough for that loyalty.
Right. I'm like, they weren't loyal to me. Why would I be loyal to them? They told me they could only afford my salary at this. And then
that's
go
a big
traveling.
problem in law enforcement. Yeah.
And well, it wasn't even law enforcement. It was the first corporate job. You know, I went out, and that job, I became like this traveling auditor, so to speak, within
Okay,
the
yeah.
company. And I would go to these other locations, see how they're doing, write up a report, and then they'd either close them down or keep them going. And so as I was doing this and I went to a location, I found out, I get access to HR stuff and I'm seeing all these managers who are paid more than me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wait a minute, I manage my own branch and I'm doing this and you're paying me less. And that was
Right.
my first clue. Like, I got to get out of here. This is toxic.
Yeah.
I'm being used as the Grim Reaper here.
Yeah.
And I don't want to do this for this price. And so, and then I
And
went,
then they tell you not to tell anybody. Like everything's a big secret, man.
which is against law here. So
It is against the law, and I hate it when I was like, why wouldn't you?
Right.
Why wouldn't you? Like somebody comes in making more than I do, doing the same job. I mean, that's a problem.
it's a fear, and I get it because what they're working off budgets and they're answering to stockholders, ownership groups, whatever it is, and they got to maximize that budget, and they constantly can't control themselves because when they really love somebody, they overspend.
Yeah.
When they're hiring a warm body, they underspend, and sometimes those people they love turn into nightmares, and the people that are warm bodies turn into superstars, and then they can't balance it, they can't fix it.
I do see it trying to turn over, though. I do see it change, trying to work its way in.
Yeah.
I don't know how successful it's going to be because one of the biggest corporations around is Google,
Yeah.
and they kind of set the precedence for a lot of stuff, and they want people back in the office buildings, and which, I mean, it's real estate. That's a real estate issue, but a big problem that corporate America overlooks is happy people are productive people, and maybe we have the flexibility to do things to individualize, like have an IEP for work, maybe,
Right. I
like,
like training programs that are individualized for those individuals because it's catered to what they know, how fast they can learn. So I tell people all the time, like, they'll be like, how long is training? I'm like, most people will figure it out in 2 days, but I'll go as long as 5 if you need it.
Right.
And like, is it paid? Of course I'm going to pay you for it.
right.
Like,
we
yeah,
don't
I'm gonna
expect
pay you.
anybody to work for free.
But it's a 1099 contract position.
Right.
So, at the same time, once I release you, you're on your own. You got to make the money, which means you got to hit the stops and you got to do
Right.
it efficiently and accurately, and so, people like this, the whole minimum wage thing and the fight, fast food. I had a long conversation with somebody here recently. We were talking about why it took McDonald's so long to pay people more, right? It's probably the first place we all heard about, like, these guys are making $7.75 an hour, whatever
Right.
it was. And they're getting their butts handed to them, which was true. There was plenty of examples of what was going on with them.
Right.
Lots of, at least, anecdotal, you could see it on a camera,
Yeah.
individuals that were doing it. But there was actually, we were seeing statistics too that were starting to come out where the turnover rate and unemployment rate and
Yeah.
all the other things that we were dealing with, set aside like the social stuff, like the food stamps and stuff they had to be on, that Walmart's been really kind of focused on, or the spotlight's been put on them for, so, but when you looked at these minimum wage positions, what was really funny about it is you got to look at those companies that are really fighting against it and why.
Yeah.
So McDonald's was one of my favorite when I dug into it one time. I was just kind of paying attention closely. It's one of the greatest stories in American capitalism. Ray
Kroc. Yeah.
When you ask him what his business is, do you know what his answer is?
People.
Real estate.
Real estate. Yeah.
Real estate. They own the best corners in America.
That's true.
And
true.
they buy those for the franchisee to rent back to them. So all the money for McDonald's is made there. That means everything else is on that franchisee.
Yeah.
So the average franchisee, at one point was making really good money, but because of some of the changes that they've had to progress over the years with technology and stuff, they push that back on the franchisee because all McDonald's owns is that real estate.
Right.
So what happens is you can't afford as a franchisee to bring those wages up because you're being forced all this other stuff that's in your agreement to go up, and you're paying the company more for those things,
right.
And you can't bring those salaries up, and it's a big battle. So what happened is we saw the salaries go up, and then we saw the price of everything go up, right? So when you look at that dynamic, it holds true when people go, oh, if we raise that minimum wage, the price of stuff's going to go up. Some in industries for sure, because they set a business model.
They're doing it on purpose, though. They got to
right, because the one place they're not going to cut is the shareholder or the owner's cut.
Yeah.
But the funny part is McDonald's is a good
That's a
example.
lot of, people don't understand that about economics in the stock market is that's what life is like living in a free market.
Well, but at McDonald's, what's unique about it is the average franchisee dollar, I won't say dollar amount, but in terms of inflation, it has gone down.
Yeah.
What they make. So right now, I think it's like $150,000 is the
Right.
average profit margin for an owner
I
per
think
year.
I think McDonald's though is, man, they do a lot of changing too quick.
Right.
You know.
Sure. But here, let's talk about the other one, Walmart. What's Walmart's big advantage over everybody? It's the same as Amazon.
You
Distribution.
well,
These
yes,
distribution
and
centers.
so I found out something about Walmart recently that like wherever they're at, they regionally distribute.
Yep.
They pull all their products from, like, they don't have big shipping containers that come over across from China or whatever. They buy the stuff that's already here.
Yep.
And then they distribute it from their own warehouses.
Correct. And they did that. That was what separated them from back in the day when Kmart and Sears and JCPenney, all these other companies were huge and everybody laughed at Walmart. That's what turned the tables for them.
Yeah.
They developed this distribution system. And who took notice? This little book company online who went, we could do the same thing online, Amazon.
Yeah.
Boom, distribution centers everywhere. So what's that do? You can't pay the workers more if you're investing in a model where they are not the primary thing. Those companies, McDonald's doesn't care about their burgers. That's why they shrink so much. That's why the patty's like this thin. It's a piece of paper or, your little coaster here on a bun. Same thing at Walmart. You're never, you start to see higher quality, but as the quality goes up a little bit, what you bought at Walmart in 1995 is not the same as what you buy here.
Exactly.
In clothing and stuff like that. That stuff's all gotten better, but the wages haven't. Why? Because they're putting the money in on the illusion.
Yeah.
For us all, and that sounds very conspiratorial, but for me,
Oh no, it doesn't.
It's just
it
economically.
makes actual sense. Like, does somebody that with common sense that looks at the world not through jaded eyes, not through jaded lenses, but somebody that actually looks and see, like, I like being marketed to. Because like Google's personalized marketing ads, they don't really show me anything new that I'm not already thinking about buying or looking at.
That's because they listen to us.
Exactly. And there is capability to turn all that stuff off, but like people don't look at why they're marketing to a certain demographic or why they're doing this or why they're, like, you have to see things for what they really are.
Right.
And a lot of people don't.
And that's just it. I mean, if your focus and your business model is about a distribution center, real estate or whatever, and not about the illusionary thing that you've created, and which is, cheap stuff, and which is what we see now. Walmart's prices are coming up because it's a hard model to hold on to.
Right.
And they're trying to figure it out, and they'll figure it out without ever hurting their shareholders.
I think it might be just, geopolitics might have a lot to do with what's going on with Walmart right now, because like I've made a big change in my life. Like made in USA is very important to me right now. And it's not really necessarily made in USA. Like I know you're Canadian and American, and it's anywhere North America for me right now is good enough. Like I'll take Mexican products, I'll take Canadian products all day long. COVID really showed me something very scary.
Yeah.
And like those shipping lanes, when they closed, we were all screwed, man.
Right.
And there was a lot of stuff that we didn't have because it was made overseas. And we've made it so easy for our corporations and our companies to take things overseas. And it's stupid.
Yeah.
Because if something big like that happens, we can't protect ourselves.
Well, and it goes back. That's what I look at when I'm dealing with, don't get me wrong. I have a, running a business, I've got to be smart about the money, because if I'm not smart about the money, it won't last, and the business won't last. And I've got to be
that old adage, a fool and his gold are soon parted.
Yeah, exactly. And so, and I my responsibilities aren't just to me and my kids and my family, they're to my employees that are depending on it.
Yes.
And that's that triangle I was talking about earlier with, my clients, my customers, and myself. We have to live symbiotically.
Right.
And if at any point, any one of those, one of the biggest questions I get in the interview process is, do you fire people because the customer wants you to fire them? Absolutely freaking not. Like at the end of the day, I'm going to figure out why, and I may pull you off that customer.
Right.
That's a possibility, and it has happened. But at the end of the day, no. And am I going to fire a customer for a employee? No, it's going to be, again, look at the individual circumstances.
Yeah, as long as you're actually like productive and trying to be a decent person, there's not really anything that we can't train you out of,
Exactly.
So
Well, commitment and ethic, those are on you,
yeah,
and I tell my technicians all the time, those two are on you.
yeah,
You sort those two out, we can live symbiotically. But the phrase I always use with them when we do like the interview, which is usually a ride along, or they come and they start their training, and I'll tell them like, look, if any one of those triangle pieces is eaten away too far, your problems can't be my problems can't be your problems. You're never going to know if I'm short somewhere or if I'm spending more money somewhere. I'm not going to put that on you.
right,
We're going to talk about it as a group as a whole. I've fought raising my prices this year, and I did that on purpose,
right.
because I did see a couple of my competitors raise their prices, and I was like, I'm okay.
Yeah.
I'll be okay. I don't want to push it back to my customer.
Right. And I don't understand during certain economic times why corporate America can't do that. Just give us a break. But,
Yeah. Well, and I told, my customers, a few of them have asked me like, are you going to do it at some point? I said, I don't know. Honestly, the single biggest factor that will make me raise my price is you guys.
Right.
If I got to chase payments, our system's fully automated. If I'm chasing you every week, that'll make me raise my price. I want to get paid for my work time. I don't want to go home and spend 2 hours off the clock,
chasing people down. Yeah.
Right. Or chasing down other stuff for you guys. I just don't want to deal with it. So, at the end of the day, if you make it easy for me, I make it easy for you. We don't go anywhere. And it's the same thing, the technicians. Well, do you give raises? Heck yeah. First 90 days, you're going to get a big one, you know, and then it's 6 months, we're going to talk about whether or not we W-2 you.
Right.
You may not want to go W-2. You may want to stay 1099. That's on you, We're going to teach you how to be safe with your taxes. So I'm not going to go, hey, you're 1099. I remember working for a company one time. They were like, this is a 1099 position. You understand what it is? I'm like, yeah, sure. And I'm looking it up at the time and I'm like, oh, yeah, I can do this. And then the first year ends and you're like, oh my God, I owe how much in taxes? And I didn't do any of the stuff that I needed to do to protect myself.
It's like 20 some percent. Yeah.
And you're like, oh my gosh, I made $40,000 last year. I owe $8,000. I'm in trouble, And so I don't want to do that to my people. So I teach them, I give them right up front, like, hey, I'm even working on the point again, another app where I can be like, hey, this is your guidebook, so to speak. Get that training documentation electronically now to them so that they can actually go through it and go, okay, I got to track my mileage for that. I got to do this for that.
And the more we learn about this business side of things, it's not easy by any means, but there's difference in how you would run this business versus like a hamburger joint. We don't have any product that we have to keep in stock. We don't have any we don't really have we have a couple $100 a month in overhead. That's pretty much it. But so we're in the negative quite a bit since we started, and we're not making any money on this, but I didn't really mean for it to be a productive business right away, because we just started. And
takes time, build a brand. Yeah. And, that was even us. That's why I didn't take the salary for a long time. I was like, we're going to build this brand up. And now there's still people that see my truck and go, there's poopers. My favorite phrase. I love this phrase. I get this all the time. People really that lazy? They don't want to scoop their poop. I'm like, it's not laziness.
Right.
I mean, I've got people that are seniors that just can't do it, but they still have a dog.
And people like your wife, you said she can't deal with it at all physically.
Or they did it, and now all of a sudden their job has changed. Maybe they worked from home so they could do it. And now they're getting called back to the office. And they bought 2 dogs during the pandemic. Right. Stuff like that happens. Life changes. Stop judging them and assuming the worst. Do I have lazy people? Absolutely.
Or in my case, I'd be the lazy guy, because I was explaining to my son yesterday, we were out doing Easter festivities, and I went out to smoke a cigarette, just messing around. I wanted to take the fence out along the side of my house.
Gotcha.
And I went out to smoke a cigarette, and I just messing around with it. And an hour later, I took the whole damn thing down. And so you just sometimes, I forgot where I was going with that, but that happens to me all the time too. I space out.
Laziness.
Laziness. We had scooped all the leaves from the front to the back from the side. And I told him, I was like, no, we're not going to pick all these up. I just want to get them out of there so I could run over them with the lawnmower.
Mulch them up. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I said, this is how, he was trying to be as lazy as he could about it. And I was like, 5 minutes, you can be done and go in the house while I do my job. And then I kind of got on to him because he was piddle farting around. And I'm like, come on, let's go.
Right.
And he did more work getting out of work than he did like if he'd have just
That's
done
that
it.
process early. You got to let him do that.
Right.
You got to
And
let
I
him just eat
get
it.
frustrated, getting frustrated. And
I do that all the time. I'll be like, look, you could have been in 20 minutes ago. Look at that.
right.
Now you got 20 more minutes to go.
So I got this riding lawnmower right out here behind us. And so I went out there and just rode over all the leaves. And it took me 10 minutes to do that. But it took me longer to mow over them than it would just picking them up and bagging them. And I told him, I was like, see, that's what real lazy people do. Like they do a little bit of work here. And then it saved me, probably it didn't save me any time at all, but it saved me the bending and scooping and picking up and I don't have any bags of leaves that I have to sit out on the curb now,
Right.
And I was like, that's how laziness works for me. Like I figure out how to do the hard stuff the easy way. And then like, if I have a lazy solution, that's what I'll do.
But you make a good point there. Like it's not necessarily laziness. You're avoiding the back pain and the
Yeah.
other things. And so, that's the same thing for a lot of customers. When they see me in their yard and they see the rake I'm carrying and they see the type of scoop I'm carrying, they're like, I never would have thought of that.
Yeah.
Like, well, if you go into Pooper Scooper websites, you'll see all of us have this,
Right.
like even when I first saw my guy, I was like, ugh, I've been doing this wrong the whole time. I'm out there at PetSmart buying pooper scoopers.
Yeah.
When I needed something industrial or commercial, like what I use now,
Right.
And so I just never thought about it until I saw it.
Yeah.
And then you're like, this is genius. Not really. It's just common sense.
Well, we had Def and Ball for trash disposal service, and we asked them like for dumpster rental and what's the smallest dumpster you have, and they rented us like a 90-gallon, can with the lid on it, and they delivered it to us, and it was like $30 a month, or no, it was $30 every 3 months. That's what it was for just the rental on that, and then plus the trash service.
Right.
And so it was a nice big heavy duty commercial can. And when we went to Walmart and Lowe's and
Home Depot.
we didn't find anything like that. We didn't find anything heavy duty. And then I looked them up I looked at the brand and I looked them up and I was like, that's only $200 for that nice ass trash can. We bought ourselves one.
Yeah.
And it saved, I mean, it's probably paid for itself 10 times by now.
Man.
We've had it for a good 10, 12 years.
That leads me, one of the things that I love to talk about, I think I brought this to you on the phone the other day, the four freedoms. There's a gentleman, he's Canadian, well, he's American living in Canada. His name's Dan Sullivan, and he's got some great books, The Gap and the Gain, and 10 times is easier than 2 times.
Right.
And so these are great books, and I'm a big fan of them. I love some of these guys that talk about entrepreneurship like him, Gary Vee. Dan's a little more reserved than Gary Vee. If you know Gary Vee, nobody says fuck as much as that man does. So I love you, Gary Vee. But, so Dan Sullivan talks about the 4 freedoms, and you just mentioned one. One of them is the freedom of money. And freedom of money, people think, oh, that's wealth. And, it takes people a long time to make money. It's not money. It's, living within your means is part of freedom of money.
Yeah.
It's control and it's discipline. But the other part of it is, and I love this phrase, you don't have a problem if you got enough money to solve it.
Hey,
If you've got enough money to solve a problem, you don't have a problem. Because I see
think
people
that's
all
the
the
way
time.
the United States government operates.
Well, they because they make the money. Yeah, they never have to worry about it. They just pass it to the next generation. But for us, like I tell my wife all the time, like you just mentioned a good example. You're sitting there and you're renting it. You have to look at that. We just did this recently. We sat down and we looked at, we have to have internet. We just have to for her job. She works from home and for my business. So we were looking at different internet options. And so, United Fiber just came through St. Joe, laid down all this thing. We always wanted them.
I just bit the dust or bit the bullet and ordered United Fiber myself.
That's what we're doing. And so it was funny because, when they were in just Savannah and we would be at my sister-in-law's house up there, it was fast enough. We liked it, but it was cheaper. Now that they've expanded, the prices went up. And so we held off. We're like, let's not. And so, we're trying to tighten our belts and try to get some affairs in order. Now that we're making decent money from the business and stuff, and I'm taking a salary, we're like, let's catch up on some stuff that we fell behind on, And so, but that means tightening the belts, right?
Yeah.
And so she knows this philosophy. I've preached it 100 times. If you got enough money to solve a problem, you don't have a problem. And so we have this problem. We're like, well, so now we got to find the money. Do we have the money somewhere? So we sat down, we looked at our cable bill because we had cable. We've always had cable.
Yeah,
We watch
yeah.
a lot of football, so I need to have those channels. So I was like, let's go buy an antenna and see if I can catch enough of the channels.
Yeah.
Sure as shit I do.
I need to do that because I don't like St. Joe's media channels.
Right. So I can catch a few from Kansas City. So I'm like, perfect. So we looked at that. And then we started paying attention. How much do we watch Netflix? How much do we watch Disney
Oh my
Plus?
goodness. We spend $70 a month just on subscription services, man.
So we get Netflix for free through our T-Mobile.
Yeah.
So, but some of the others, we don't care about the commercials. We're not that bougie. But when we sit
am.
down, when we sit down and we looked at what we did, I was like, how much are we watching cable? Like, why do we have it?
Yeah.
It's $90 a month.
Yeah.
That we can unload right now. And so we paid attention for 3 weeks and we realized we watched cable twice a day
Yeah.
for less than an hour. And I was like, get it gone. Not only will our internet go down in price, but now we lost the cable cost.
Right.
And on top of that, we looked at our subscriptions and realized we doubled up on one of our subscriptions.
Oh,
We
shit.
just didn't know it. So we suddenly found money that solved the other problem because now we don't have that problem. you know?
Right.
And that's part of that freedom of money. It's paying attention to it.
Yeah.
That, Dan Sullivan talks about how entrepreneurs get a bad rap because all they do is care about money. And that's what people think about them. But the truth is they don't want to care about money. Part of having freedom of money is thinking about it in a sense that it's a
Yeah.
tool. It's your tool. It's something you're trying to use to get to a means because it gets you to the other three freedoms. And those freedoms are important in our lives. And that's where you want to go. And it's something I try to provide for my technicians. I'm never going to get them all the way there, but I try to help them understand this. Like, this should be your goals in life.
Absolutely.
And if they leave me, great. They're going to go on to bigger, better things. And I want that. Most of my former employees have gone on to bigger and better things.
Right.
So, those other three freedoms are, come really easy after that. So you've got freedom of money, freedom of time is the next one. For my clients, if you're paying attention, this is why I'm not open on weekends. And I won't go open on weekends unless I have to make up time.
And we discussed this on the phone the other day as well. And freedom of money, freedom of time.
Freedom of relationships, because that's a two-folder, because it's about the relationships you have and in cherishing them, but it's also about building other relationships. When you asked me to be on here, that was like, heck yeah. I didn't know who you were until you started telling me who you were. And then I know of you, but I don't know you. And I'm like, this is a relationship. Let's build it. Let's see where it goes. And
Absolutely.
let's see if it's something that'll help us in the future. So why not? I honestly love the podcast after I watched it a couple times. I'm like,
Thank you.
couple episodes. I was like, okay, this is kind of interesting. Cool. And then I was like, I really don't care about the podcast. It's just about the conversation.
Absolutely.
You know?
And that's exactly why I'm doing what I'm doing. I don't give a crap about the podcast, especially right
He
now.
does. Trust me.
I mean, yes, that's not exactly what I meant, but I don't really care like if it makes money right now,
Right.
because I know if I put out a good product, if I'm authentic and there's plenty of people out there like, so one of the best pieces of advice I got about this thing was from a little app called vidIQ.
Okay.
And it was trying to teach me who my ideal listener or viewer would be. And for me, it's myself, because I want to entertain myself most importantly. And from this would be like our 23rd, 24th episode or something like that. But if we go back all the way to the first one, it's completely different.
Sure.
And as I kept going, I remembered, why do I want to do this? And I kept going back over that same thing. And ultimately, I love to talk to people, man.
Yeah.
And I love to talk to genuine people. And I was just talking to my last guest about this, I could have celebrities in, that's fine, but I wouldn't talk to them about their movies, or like, it'd be like, I used Matthew McConaughey as an example. Like, what does Matthew McConaughey think on a Tuesday night when he's getting ready to, like, when he's brushing his teeth, what's going through your head?
All right.
Exactly.
He wrote a kid's book here recently, and it's phenomenal.
I didn't, I
Your
think I heard
kid's
that.
the age that it's geared towards.
Really?
Your child. My 8-year-old, we kind of got it. He's a very advanced kid, but he even was like, "Oh, this is cool." It's what is it called? Man,
We'll have to look this up and actually show
Yeah.
a picture on the bottom of the
It's a
screen.
really,
But
really good book, but the premise of it is just because, and so just because I'm angry doesn't mean I hate you,
oh,
and
that's
it's a
awesome.
bunch of like just becauses, and it's very
Yeah.
beatniky and how it's like it flows, but it's really great concepts that help kids understand like you can be both things.
Right.
You can be in it one situation, just because I lied doesn't mean I'm a liar.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
sometimes, when you have to have that conversation about Christmas and Easter eventually when they're old enough, right?
Yeah.
And you start
You
talking
lied to
about,
me. Well,
right.
there's good reason. We just
You're
wanted
a
to.
liar.
Right. Yeah.
We did it a very special way with our older boys, and they now understand it and are going to help us with our youngest. And so when you kind of get into that position, his book takes people through it in a way that there's these things that we love to judge people on.
Yeah.
And the whole premise is you are not what you did in that moment.
Absolutely.
You are what you do from that moment on.
Absolutely.
And I love it. I
It
absolutely
took
love
me
it.
a long time to understand that as well. Cause when I was a kid, man, I had horrible influences in my life, and I didn't have the best upbringing. Like I wasn't abused, but my siblings were. And, I went through a tough time as a child. And then as I'm growing up, I didn't know the proper way to handle myself. I was very violent, and I've got a domestic violence conviction. And so that limited me in a lot of things that I could and couldn't do. And I didn't understand the things that I was doing at the time weren't conducive and that weren't what real people did.
Right.
And so as I grew up and things changed, I had to understand that one bad mistake does not define me.
Right.
And I don't have to be that person forever.
Right.
I went through years of therapy to learn that.
Sure.
But I still beat myself up about it all the time because like, hey, that's a very horrible thing to do. But at the same time, I grew from that. I learned from that. And I'm not that person.
Let me I'll share a personal story here in a second, but I'll also finish off the 4 freedoms. That brings that last freedom into focus. The final freedom is freedom of purpose. And I try to tell people, I try to teach my kids, I try to tell my technicians, everybody that'll listen, when it comes to purpose is not, it's not a job. It's becoming who you're meant to be.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'm just a piece of that purpose, sometimes
Right.
it's just getting to know who I am. And these things are all interconnected. When you find that freedom to be able to develop those relationships, I used to joke about this all the time. I don't like people.
Yeah.
And it's
I
not,
used to say that too, but the thing is I do love people.
exactly. And it's not that I don't like people. I actually love people. I don't like dealing with all the fakeness of people.
Exactly.
When they start getting into that zone, that bullshit meter starts reading off, I'm like, gotta go. Can't do
Yeah.
this. So that brings me to that personal story, for me, and I'll share this. A lot of people actually probably don't know this about me that know me, but I'll share it here with you. My wife knows, and several family members know. So when I left law enforcement, I was suffering some pretty bad depression.
Yeah.
I'd gone through a really horrible divorce, and I had nobody. I stayed in this country for my family.
Right.
Had become a citizen, became a police officer, and then here I was stuck with nothing. I had no house, no nothing. So I tried to make it work, tried to do it. I had suffered with some mental health issues up until then. I grew up in a very broken household.
Yeah.
Abuse and stuff was pretty prevalent. Drugs, alcohol, running away, all those little things when I was a kid. And so when people talk to me, they're like, man, you got this bigger than life personality. And, you seem like a great guy. Da, da, da. And in the back of my head, I always was like, even as a police officer, people are like, man, that guy's got his shit together. Meanwhile,
Yeah, you're always
my
thinking if
dumpster's
they
on
only
fire.
knew. Yeah, if you only knew. And that's a lot of people. I say that about my relationship with my wife all the time because people see this perfect picture perfect image of my wife and I because of how we are outside the home.
Right.
And it's not just outside the home. We are ourselves on camera.
Right.
And it's pretty hard to put on a facade when people are, but they don't see us in our ugly moments.
Right.
And I have to remind people, I'm like, hey, we're people just like everybody else. We have our moments where we don't like each other very much.
Yeah.
But The difference is how we choose to move forward from that.
That's the purpose.
And
And that's for me. I tell people all the time, like, so let me go back for a second before I say that. So in 2007, sorry, six. I always struggle to remember this. So 18 years now. Just last week was 18 years. So I actually committed suicide. And
no shit.
yep, swallowed a bunch of pills. I was gonna pull out my gun. I couldn't do it. And I swallowed enough pills that my heart stopped. And I was on the phone crying, not because I had, wanted attention or anything. A lot of people always say that stuff. I was just in pain. Like the pain, mental pain and the emotional pain had become so much for me.
Hey man, since we're going
My
there,
heart broke,
I've been in that same spot, man. I didn't, I've thought about it, but not.
Well, I went all the way, and I remember waking up in the hospital, and some friends of mine were there, and friends I thought I'd lost. And eventually I did lose them because I still wasn't healthy afterwards.
Right.
It took a while for me to figure it out. A lot of therapy. I spent several weeks in a hospital, a residential facility out in Kansas. And then I spent, probably a year and a half in therapy. And during that time when I was going through that, I learned a lot about myself. Like you said earlier, you had to figure some stuff out. And I won't say I haven't had thoughts since then, but I've got the coping mechanisms now to figure it out. And, and since then I've been through some stuff, I've had some pretty brutal things happen, and I know now that purpose has come forward for me because I have handled them differently than I have in the past.
Absolutely.
And so, call it growth, call it whatever it was, but I had some amazing people in my life growing up that I just took for granted.
Yeah.
I had a high school football coach that I still talk to this day. He is the father figure of my life. My best friend at the second high school I went to, we don't talk much, but when we do, it's like things have never changed. He's a great human being. A couple other friends that reach out to me all the time on Facebook and stuff, and we just pick it up when I go home to Canada. They want to get together, have a beer. Granted, I don't drink anymore, fellas. But, things like that. And so going back to, me being, I think I told you I've been sober for 10 months.
Yes.
I don't drink alcohol anymore.
Congratulations on that, by the way.
I appreciate it. It's been hard a little bit because I've just grown up with it. And I was always the guy, like, I don't have a problem. I never had a problem.
Yeah.
And I still, to this day, not sure I had a problem, but I did start to make mistakes.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I can't do this anymore. It was actually this concert last year. I realized I drank too much and I drove and nothing happened. And I got to a certain point, my wife was like, hey, I'm going to drive. I'm like, absolutely. And I went home and I was like, I thought in my life I would never do that. Never had. And I freaked out and I said, that's it. I'm done.
Right.
And cold turkeyed it. And it wasn't like it was everyday thing or even an every weekend thing, but when I did drink, I went way overboard all the time. I was Frank the Tank, old school, man. I'd streak down anytime anybody wanted me, even though people wouldn't want to see this naked, but I would do it. I just who I was.
Oh man, don't say that. There's somebody out there for everybody.
Oh, even my wife would be mad. No, so for me, that moment, it was a next pinnacle break point,
Right.
And we call them, in Dan Sullivan's book, he calls them 10X moments.
Yeah.
It's a moment when you realize you can expand your horizon, because immediately after that, a month and a half later, I quit soda. I just don't drink soda anymore. Now, if I was to tell you my worst addiction 4 years ago, it would not be alcohol. It would not be food. It would be soda. I could not let that.
I would say that's my worst addiction, but it's not. I smoke cigarettes, but soda is probably my second worst.
It's always been my worst since I was a kid. And diet, I mean, even like the Sam's Choice little sparkling water flavor. Yep. It was that sparkliness. I had to have it.
Yes,
sugary
the
sparkling.
Carbonation. Yes,
because it's not just carbonation. Because you throw a freaking sparkling water at me, I'm going to throw it in your face. Right. But if it's fruity flavored, sweet, and it's bubbly, I'm all in. Energy drinks. Yeah, I had a real problem with energy drinks for a while.
I did too. Right up until I realized that they could possibly kill me.
Yeah,
and then,
I was getting heart palpitations.
Yeah,
I worked for a company that we had a partnership with monster.
Oh,
And so I got a case a week
Yeah.
for free. And then they upped it to 2 cases. And I was like, I was giving them away because my heart was like, duh, 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 duh.
Yeah.
And I'd be resting.
You remember when they came out with those 32-ounce cans of Green Monster, the BFCs?
Yeah.
Yeah. I when those came out, I was like, yes, that's my jam. And I get one in the morning. It was gone by noon.
Yeah.
And that's when I realized I had a
So
problem.
I would get a case of those 32 ounces, which would be 12. And then they upped it to 2. And I'd get the coffee one, and I would get some of the different flavored ones. And I would drink 2 a day in about a 3-hour span every morning. Usually
Wow.
a coffee followed by one of those. And it was just bad. And it was just horrible. I mean, mentally, I couldn't handle
I
it.
think that having the coffee in addition to maybe, because I think there's actually more caffeine in coffee.
There is.
And so that in addition to all that sugar, and wow.
I was wound, and so I stopped doing that. But that was years ago. That was in 2016.
You remember those ephedrine pills that they used to sell at the gas stations? Man, I used to eat the shit out of those until I was like, hey, this is legal meth.
Yellow
I better
and
quit
red.
Yes,
Yeah.
the yellow jackets.
Yellow jackets.
Yeah.
Those things are crazy. But yeah, so, for me, I just, when I stopped all those things, a lot of clarity came into life for
Yeah.
me, and it helped me better with the job. It's helped
You know
me,
what really helped me with clarity was shrooms, man.
like,
But that's a whole, like
mushrooms?
magic mushroom. That's a whole different
that's a
conversation.
different conversation.
But
I'm not, I grew up in Canada, so like weed, mushrooms, I get it.
yeah, those things have been legal there for a while.
Yeah.
So,
And so I got in trouble as a police officer one time. I went to a house. It was funny. This poor guy, he opened up the door. It was a noise complaint. So he opens up the door. And it's like Cheech and Chong's house, right?
Right.
And so, sorry, I'm old. That's a reference to
Oh
the
no!
70s for some of you guys.
Anybody that's watching that smokes,
Probably our age group.
they already know.
So yeah, smoke just come wafting out of this guy's house, young kid, college kid. I said, hey, where's the weed? Oh, what you talking about? I'm like, dude, where's the weed? So just bring it to me. We can be done with this.
Right.
And we went back and forth. He kept trying to convince me. I said, listen, this is what's going to happen. I'm going to have to pull you out of the house, and I'm going to have to detain you and hold the door until a warrant comes. Then I'm going to come in. I'm going to tear your house up. Just give me the weed. It's a little
Right.
amount of weed. Do you even want us back here?
Right.
He's like, no, come here. And he hands me this bag of weed. He's like, what are you going to do with it? I said, well, I'm supposed to issue a ticket, and I'm supposed to do this, this, and this. And I walked down to the sewer, and I poured it in and poured water over it. And he cried.
I'm telling you,
just
that was worse than the ticket. That was worse
That's
than
what
the
he
ticket.
told me. He's like, I just take the ticket next time.
And I'll tell you what, man.
I got suspended for it, dude.
I would have been so pissed off because I just bought that bag. You
He
know?
did. He said he smoked his first bong, his first bowl off of it right then and there. And I was like, oh, my bad, dude. That sucks.
I mean, me being me, I would have been like, go get that warrant. You gonna wake the judge up for?
It was middle of the day. It was his own stupidity.
So
He gets the bowl, starts lighting it up, blasting some music. It was good music. It was Led Zeppelin. So I'm like, hey, man,
like, why wouldn't you do that outside?
Then I got in
you
trouble.
goofball?
I got in trouble from the chief. And I was like,
Man, that made a bigger impact
Yeah.
than the ticket would have.
and I even told him, I was like, look, man, I have nothing against weed. Because at the time I just didn't. I get it. It was against the law. And I got
you were
arrested.
an officer with a conscience. I bet you got in trouble more than just that time for having a conscience.
Yeah,
didn't you?
I got suspended one time too. So for just being
It's-
overly nice to somebody and giving them a break, I shouldn't have given them.
I ran into a sheriff's deputy that quit the department because he had to, and no, he didn't know.
My chief was awesome. Do not get me wrong. He was very cool, but he's got an image, and I get that. This is why I left law enforcement. It wasn't him. He's a good guy, but it was the image. And I was
Yeah.
like, I can't be that. I can't be insincere. I cannot be that guy.
Yeah.
And I know
And
officers
you can get away with that in a place like St. Joe. Like you could get away with that because there's so much area here that they don't have a lot of time to deal with that shit.
But I
So,
mean, there's always going to be that person. This is what I discovered because it was the other officer on scene that got me in trouble. But it's
oh my God,
it's the air of the visual nature, and I get that. And that's the part I just couldn't do anymore. I love that job. My grandfather was a constable in Canada, and that's whose footsteps I was trying to follow.
Yeah. I
Everybody
have a
was,
great respect for law enforcement, military servicemen,
yeah, same.
and all over the world, not just NATO, but all over the world.
Well, I was top cadet in my class, and so I thought this was my life. And breaking away from it was very difficult, and so when I walked away from it after my suicide attempt, I actually had an opportunity to be back as a law enforcement officer, had the stuff, because I was never outwardly trying to hurt anybody. It was just about pain in myself
Yeah.
and not understanding it. And so I got an opportunity to get back into it, and I did. But the politics was what was killing me, and part of what tore me up and was creating this turmoil inside of me was, like I said, there's a lot of officers that they are like, oh, I don't have to change anything. And that's great. I think that's amazing. I have
Yeah.
some good friends that are amazing officers just as who they are, but I'm not them.
Right.
I can't do that. That's not, for me, my lines sit in a different area. My gray areas are different.
Right.
And so when it comes to certain things, I had to sit down one day and realize this is not for me.
Yeah.
I just, there, I had an arrest one time that I got accused of being abusive, and I didn't even touch the person.
Right.
And I was like, it's just my name's the name they remembered off of the shirt. And
Right.
it went around this small little town, and I became this bad guy, and to the point where somebody was bad mouthing in front of my small son, who's now 23,
man.
and didn't realize that I was the officer,
Yeah.
And I was like, are you kidding me? And it hurt. It just stung, hit in a place, because, I never thought as an officer I would hear that kind of disrespect.
Yeah, and that all goes back to like we're all people. Man.
Exactly. And don't get me wrong, I was not a perfect officer.
Like I say that all the time. Like you shit like I do.
Yeah.
Like
Everybody poops.
Yeah.
Just
you
like
put
dogs.
your pants
I just
on.
don't scoop the poop people kind.
Now there's probably a price. That
Never enough for people stuff. No way. So yeah, for me, I think that, I've come a long way. I love owning my business. I'm a healthier individual in life right now, and I just want to pass it on to people. That's kind of where I'm at.
Man, that's I love that, and I'm glad I met you, man, because
same.
because you don't meet too many people that are like that, and then you've got a wealth of experience and knowledge, man. You grew up in Canada, and you're down here for whatever reason, See, I'm from here, so I struggle with why anybody would want to come here. But then I think about moving away, and then I'm like, man, this place is really kind of perfect.
You talk about leaving here, and everybody does. I when I lived here, I hated it. And even now I have moments where I'm like, gosh, I hate this part of this town.
Man, I
But
could
that's
show you a video
everywhere.
about North End. There's a video of a chick.
I saw
that's-
it.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
How disgusting, man.
Yeah, it's and the truth of the matter is, but that's everywhere.
Yeah,
I've
and
seen
that
it.
is- and that's
I've
bad.
witnessed it, And so whether it was in Albuquerque under the big,
I went to
big
San
exchange.
Francisco during COVID, man. It was horrible. Like you could smell the homeless camp before you could see them.
Oh my God,
It was terrible.
But I mean, even outside of economic situations, there's just some things that frustrate me. There was a time where the older money ruled here, so like you just couldn't get your foot in the door.
Yeah.
and
yeah.
that time's
It's
kind
still
of
like
passing.
that in some areas, but yeah.
Right. But there's also good people. I think that's because I focused on the wrong stuff, because since I've been back, I've met some amazing people here, and some of them are some of those people that were here before, and I just
Right.
didn't know who they were. And so I've changed, and because I've changed, it's changed. And I've learned this is where I was headed with this. I've learned this incredible lesson in life. Yes, I've traveled. Yes, I've lived in 2 different countries. Yes, I've lived in several states. I've got to travel across the United States. I think I've been to 41 of the states.
Wow.
In and out, at least spent one night overnight into those states. And what I've learned in all that travel, and I'm the guy, like I think I said this to you on the phone, I was a quote unquote millennial or Gen Zer before it was cool and popular.
Right, yeah.
Because I switched jobs. I just did not tolerate bullshit. And so I flip a job pretty quick. I never left my family hanging, unless I
Yeah.
got fired, that's always unexpected, but I never left my family hanging. I would go find another one when this one wasn't working out, and then I'd quit that one with notice and go to that one. And if that one didn't work out, find another one, quit that one with that. And I just move down the chain.
Right.
And funny thing is, people talk about on TikTok and Instagram and Facebook all the time. You want to get a raise, switch jobs. I've been doing that forever. I mean, I went from making $14 an hour to $70,000 an hour in a very short period because I flipped jobs.
Right.
And it sounds horrible that that's how it has to be, but I learned, because it was never about the flipping of the jobs. It's what did I learn in those services?
Yeah.
When I lived in those states, when I lived in those other countries, or in that other country, when I lived or worked those jobs, what did I learn? What am I taking from there? And as long as you do that, and I encourage people, like, go move to another state. You're going to be surprised how much you miss this. Because I told my wife when we left, I'm not going to miss Kansas City.
Yeah.
And we were probably in New Mexico for a while. I was like, if it wasn't for the beautiful sunsets here, I would probably miss what we call home now.
Yeah.
And she laughed about it. And then we went to Texas. It didn't take long before I was like, I think we need to get you back to Missouri, because it wasn't even just about me. It was about my kids, seeing the family that's here. And, it was all those
You don't
things.
realize of all the, like, I squandered a lot of time with my family because I thought they'd be here forever, man.
Right.
Yeah.
And they all go off and do things. I mean, your sister, she's out in Nashville.
Yeah. I actually do talk to her quite a bit, and I'm like the only family member that visits her on a regular basis.
Gosh, I went out there for training for this when I
Yeah.
got my franchise, and I didn't get time with her. And I was like, I am so sorry.
Right.
Because she's an awesome person. And so I wanted to meet her husband and see how that went.
You'd love him. So he's ex-law enforcement, and he had to, no, I don't really want to speak for him, but he had mentioned to me a lot of the politics is why he had to step back
and I get it.
Not go back.
Yeah. And
he has an injury now that prevents him from being a police officer.
Gotcha.
But he, the politics of he saw the inner workings, and the police department didn't back him up or anything like that. And it's very politics based, like, we don't care about you because this is bad optics or whatever.
Right.
And he had mentioned some of that as to why he couldn't go back. And it's just, I see that a lot. It's not just him. I've heard that from. It's just a lot of the officers that, like,
it does take a special person. Like, you've got to be able to tolerate some shit and be able to still function forward. And there are people that can do that.
And you have to have a certain type of moral flexibility as well, because, like, a lot of things, like so I do a lot of, I watch podcasts and listen to podcasts, and one of the things that's universal for FBI and CIA is they have to have moral flexibility.
Right.
They go and they recruit people like you and I with, like, I have ADHD and high anxiety, and they recruit people like that because they deal with situations with a degree of mental or moral flexibility. Like, I can very easily compartmentalize some things that I do just to get that job done.
Right.
And because I'm so patriotic, I would do it without a second thought.
Sure. I mean, that's where I've changed, because there was a time I was doing those things and I just hated it.
Yeah.
Same with companies, like I was the guy that drank the Kool-Aid at every corporation I worked for. I would down that Kool-Aid like it was a freaking frat party.
Marketing is what it is.
And that's what I've figured out. Like, I want to be my own person, and don't get me wrong, there's some things, like, even since I've run this franchise, that I'm like, oh, they were right about that. Man.
Yeah.
And now I get it.
They could teach it to you in a different way.
Sure.
You know what I mean? They can, like,
but they can't, because of who they're beholden to. Like, their model is meant to make as much cash as possible for the upper part, not the other way around. That's never going to be my thing. I will make enough to be okay and have those freedoms. But I'm never going to be the guy that's going to be rich. I don't want that. What was the Biggie said? More money, more problems. No, thank you. Like, it's not for me. I don't get me wrong. If somebody hands me $1 million, I'm going to be excited, happy. But I'm going to hide it very quickly.
Well, at this age, well, you're a few years older than I am, but the older we get, like, $1 million ain't shit.
Right.
Like, $1 million would be just enough for, I wouldn't be able to move. Like, we just bought this house. So it would be just enough for me to exist on for a few years, and that's it.
It's crazy that that's how we've come. But, for to bring it back around to how we started everything. So, for us, and where we're headed at Poop 911, I don't care. that's a bad phrase. I care about the money, but I don't care.
It's not the primary focus.
Right. It's those three parts of the triangle for me.
Right.
You know, it's the customer. If we can all be balanced and working out, I'm happy.
If you focus on those three, that triangle, if you focus on that, the money will fall or follow.
But
Yeah.
people get caught. That's where I was going with that. Is people get caught because they start to see the money and they go, you know, even my wife and I have done this with the business when we suddenly exploded. We're like, okay, I can pay myself salary. We can do this. We can do this. We'll pay this bill off. We'll do this. And then something happens that creates a hiccup, right?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, what am I going to do? I need that money. You know, like how do we do this? And you know, I can see that moral ambiguity comes into play right there because you're like, well, you know, I got them this far, they can suffer for a bit or
Right.
whatever, you know, and you start making shortcuts and stuff. And I looked at her in the eye. I was like, I can't do this. I cannot. We got to change our perspective.
Yeah.
Our perspective is stop making plans on money we don't have.
Right.
Let's do
Right.
this. Let's pay ourselves, pay the bills and pay ourselves an actual amount that is a savings amount.
Right.
And we stick it aside, and then everything else we do, it's whatever's left over pays what's lever's left over, and that's
Right.
what we deal with. And we started moving our bills around. We started doing what a lot of LLCs do, you know, with our bills. And so we're trying to make sure that we're covered and we're not going to be homeless ever.
Right.
But that's about it, you know, for the end of the day. Because if that happens, obviously the whole triangle goes out of balance, and
Yeah.
none of us are going to be good. But you know, in terms of actually making money, like you know, everybody's got a vision board, right?
Yeah.
I've seen what some of these companies make, what some of these franchises make. I know one that's, you know, up over $6 million a year in revenue. So, you know, if you got a margin of 30%, do the math.
Yeah.
You know, that's $1.8 million,
Yeah.
you know, in profit for yourself. You can do some fun, nice stuff with that,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Each
Oh,
year.
yeah.
Oh, yeah. But that's not my target. My target is just be comfortable, you know, take care of my clients, keep it where it needs to be that works for them and works for all of us.
And if I did have a year like that, I'd just recycle it a little bit and keep it
Put
there
it back
for,
in. Yeah. You know, there's some things like that's the other thing, you know, I told her, I was like, if we do this the other way where we push the money aside that we want, we need when it's there, you know, it'll allow us to actually budget the business better because
Yeah.
then we can look at things like fleet trucks and turning more people into W-2 employees and
Absolutely.
trying to build it. You know, we're still young. We're 19 months old. That's
Wow.
it.
Wow.
You know, and so starting to get those next steps, that's in the next 18 months,
Right.
17 months. I got to get trucks and start W-2ing some people and flipping the business from this, you know, contractor type style to this family, more oriented style.
Right.
I hate to use that phrase because I just dogged on it pretty hard a little bit ago,
Yeah,
but
it's
gonna be
different from
'cause
it's
me.
different. Yeah, it's different from somebody that actually means it though. And when you go through, like I struggle with my thoughts sometimes, and call it imposter syndrome or whatever some people call it. I worry about like staying grounded.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, what if this show does take off? Like what? And I try not to think about it too much because I gotta keep myself in reality here.
Right.
But if
Well,
it
I'm
does,
sure I'm not going to help with you taking off.
well, I mean, this has been a great conversation, and this is exactly what I wanted for the podcast is somebody real to come on
Sure.
and share exactly how they're feeling, exactly what they think. And you, man, I
It
can't
took a
thank
long
you
time
enough.
for me to get here. You know, like this is, you know, 4 years ago, you wouldn't have got the same guy.
Yeah.
You know, I was too.
Well, 4 years ago, I would have been too big of a pussy to even do this. So, like,
It's
you
good
read my
timing.
message. Like, you read my message. Like, like I said, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take,
Yep.
and that's exactly the thought process that I had your card for like 2 weeks.
It's
you
funny
know?
because that's how I end up with some of the people I have as clients because I just took a shot.
Yeah.
And, you know, I reached out and I'm like, hey, and I've been turned down a couple times. Like there's a news person or a DJ here in town that I've communicated with a few times back and forth. And they're like, we're just not in that spot yet where we need it. But
Right.
if we do, I'll call you.
Absolutely.
And I was like, cool, you know, like that's just sitting out there and that can sit out there as long as it needs to. I don't care. I'm not a
Right.
pressure salesman. But like you said, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So,
Right.
you know, there's a handful of others that I've got that it's because we put it out there.
Right.
I put this stupid little, I put together one of those cheesy little small business ads
Yeah.
that I built. So if you ever get a chance, you have to go to my Facebook page and look this up or to...
Hey, if it's okay with you, we'll play it at the end of the show.
We can, yeah. I'll send it over to you. It's corny, but I'll even replay it right now. It's just me jumping out of the truck, and I look at the camera, and my wife's holding the camera, and I'm like, hey, some people call me the Prince of Poop. Some people call me the king of crap. I'm even known as the wizard of waste. I don't care if you call me the sultan of, well, hey, just call Poop 911 in Kansas City. And it's cheesy as hell, but it was funny. It's like the most, I call it semi-viral. It got like 2,000 hits, it just locally, it just clicked with a lot of people. And I got a few celebrity type people, like known people here in town, because they saw it and they're like, oh God, this guy's a dork. And one of them even said that to me. It was like, you're kind of a dork and we like you, so we wanted to hire you.
Hey,
I'm like,
it works perfectly.
So now I've been trying to figure out the next best video for me to look like an idiot. So
I think there's something to like truth. It really works. Like when people so your business isn't fancy,
No.
And you're not trying to be, and that's perfect.
Nope.
And there's a little bit of humor there. Everybody loves it, and I mean, that's what attracted me to the truck. I Poop 911, and there's a picture of a dog on there. So
on a toilet. If you pay attention, he's on a toilet reading a newspaper.
I did not notice that.
It's amazing, and I freaking love it. We have another one that's runs on it's a cartoon thing, and it's a dog on stilts in his yard.
Yeah.
Because there's so much poop in the yard, and so those type of things, that's what drew me to them. I was like, these guys I'm a self-deprecator. Like, you can't be my size. I love telling people like, hey, I may look like a grizzly bear. I'm just a teddy bear inside.
Absolutely.
But
absolutely.
you can't, I self-deprecate a lot all the time. If this chair was to fall down right now, I'd laugh about it and be like, well, not surprising.
Right, yeah.
It's just who I am. And so, seeing a company.
If you can't laugh at yourself, who can you laugh at?
Right. Seeing a company that doesn't take it seriously on its face value, but in the background is super serious about the customer and about us as franchisees, man, it's a great relationship. And I fucking love it, because at the end of the day, like, I get to be me for the first time in a long time in a corporate setting.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I get to wear my hat. Like if you saw my hair, I sent you 2 pictures for a reason, because I wanted you to see the difference between what I looked like before. I had a little stubble, but it was shaved short, clean cut, nice button-up shirt, to now, like, man, I just do what I need to do.
You like the beard, don't you?
Oh, I love the beard.
I can't. I shaved.
I trimmed it this week.
I shaved a couple years ago when when Kansas City Chiefs won their second Super Bowl. When they won their second Super Bowl, I shaved my beard off because like a friend of mine made a Facebook group that said he's not going to shave until the Chiefs win the Super Bowl. Well, he shaved. I didn't.
Oh, no.
And then after I shaved, I was like, I don't like it. I don't like it. I don't like it.
It's like your chin shrinks and
right.
You're like, I look weird.
Right. And so this picture actually, that's an actual real picture of me that they cartoonized. And that was shortly, that was 2 years ago. But it was like a year after I had shaved it all off, and like a lot of people like, you grew that out really fast. And I'm like, oh, it's actually slow for me. I got a rash down here from my face rubbing on it. And
man, beards, man. My wife encouraged me as soon as I left that last job. She was like, grow a beard. Like, I want to see. And then so now we're growing the hair. So it's shaved short on the sides, but it's long.
I wish I could do that. I should have thought about doing it before I went bald, but like I wasn't able to have long hair until after I started going bald. Oh. And then I grow it out now. It looks terrible when it gets long.
I laugh about it all the time. My family, that's another place I pick on. So, my uncles on my mom's side, they're all bald.
Yeah.
And they were bald early.
Yeah.
30s. And on my dad's side, there was like full white heads of hair, and I'm gray, but I still have long hair, thick, bushy hair, and it's salt and peppery still, even though, I'm approaching 50, so I laugh all the time. Like, I don't know which genetics, like, it's like it balanced itself, the gray hair versus the bald, and I got kind of neither.
Right.
Fell in between. Don't get me wrong. I have white and gray. My sides get really bright white. My beard's really white.
Right.
But the top is not.
Yeah.
So people are like, weird. Yeah, it'll be there soon. But, and I even joke about my family all the time back home. I got asked, how I got into this one time. And I was like, I've got this uncle. It's kind of a family trait. We're all experts on shit. He's the biggest bullshitter you'll ever meet. My older brother, when he was a kid, he used to take his diaper off, and he was like the Picasso of shit on the Western River. And then I got this other uncle. He's a Cowboys fan, so he knows a lot about horse shit. It's only right that I got into dog shit. So, that's just where I'm at.
That's awesome. You know what? I think that's a great place to leave this show. It's
Cool.
been awesome, man. And one of the reasons why I gotta pee so bad.
Me too. So
But,
we're good.
man, it's been fantastic. I'd love to have you on again eventually,
Sure,
and we can get that went very deep in places, and I appreciate you sharing that information with me, man. And
Cut what you need, cut what you want. Doesn't matter.
no, actually, we don't
Make me skinny.
We prefer not to cut anything, and we're also we're learning all these processes. We could probably do a little bit of editing, but it costs a lot of money to
You're
do
all
it.
right.
So, but like I said, I'd like to have you on again eventually, and I have this strange feeling that we're going to be probably friends after this.
Yeah,
So,
I do too.
and I'd love to work with you again. And if you do start your own project, I'd love to help you out in any
That'd be
way I
cool.
can. And I've actually got a few friends at podcast as well. So any way we can help, we'll absolutely help. And we're going to throw your links down for your social media. You actually do have a website, right?
It's a corporate website for our national company, but yeah, I'll send you to the one that's for the North Kansas City.
Okay.
I technically have two branches.
Okay.
So I have a North branch and a South branch. I originally started with the North branch, and then when the South branch owner was done, he was like, I don't want to do this.
Right.
They gave that one to me.
Okay.
And so, and I've grown them both. I mean, the North one had 0 customers when I started, of course, and I grew it. It's to about 160 plus customers now.
That's awesome.
And then the South branch, when I inherited it, had 38 customers, and we're at about 142, 145.
Nice.
So I blew
Nice.
that one up as well. And so that one will eventually be bigger than the North just because it's a bigger population.
Yep.
So-
We know it's in South Kansas City.
1.2 million people in the South in my zip codes, and up North, I think I've got in my zip codes about 750,000
Wow.
household or people. So it's
That's
just,
a lot of opportunity, man.
there is. I believe this is a franchise, if it's handled right, will eventually one day be, one of those $2-3 million franchises.
You should be able to go hands off in not too distant
Oh,
future
I'm
as well.
close. I almost was semi hands off. I'll never be 100% hands off. But
Well, you know what I mean.
I wanna
Just
go
step
to
back a little bit.
QA guy, like where I
That would
just
be awesome
once or
if that's
twice
all
a
you
day,
did all day was just your QA stuff. That
and
would
then
be
go home and
absolutely
run payroll and do some marketing. And
Absolutely.
take a nap.
I tell you what, though, we're going to link your social media page,
got
link your website, and I'd like to play your commercial at the end of the
I'll send it
episode.
to you.
And we'll. I mean, this has been fantastic. I appreciate you, Martin.
No
Again,
problem, bro.
Martin Wood with Poop 911. With
Take
that,
care,
guys, we'll see you later.
See you guys.